Mark, we're getting into a really interesting show today. I'm excited about this. We have Juliet Scott-Croxford from Brompton on today's show. She's such a great person. We've been friends with her for a while. We were just with her in Bentonville a couple months ago, and it was just fascinating to get kind of the inside story on what's going on with Brompton.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about Brompton. It's such a different brand, and they're so focused on their customer and who their customer is. And unlike a lot of companies, you and I talk a lot about how the industry isn't really different. It's a sea of sameness in this industry, and they're somebody who stands out as not being that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mark. And I think I think for both of us, that was the one thing that popped out from this call above everything else was the fact that it's just such a differentiated brand. Okay, the product is has these small wheels, it folds up, right? It's mostly made for city commuting. They're making an e-bike now, a titanium one, a gravel one, but it's really made for riding around the city, right? So the product looks different, it rides different. It's aimed at a different customer, like a lot at commuters. Even their whole mission is about urban happiness. We create urban happiness. They also, how they make their bikes is different. They have their own factory in London. I have visited there. It's really impressive and way bigger than you would think. It's like a massive operation. That whole brand just feels unique to me, as you point out, in a way that's totally different from every other bike brand.
Yeah, and you said it, but really, I think it all comes back to their customer and the fact they may have all these different categories that they're doing, but their customer is rebellious by nature because they're choosing something that's really different, visually different, it's functioning different, and I think that they probably are very focused on who that customer is and what motivates them. And unlike a lot of other brands, they're not trying to make bikes that are like all the other bikes in the market. So I think they have a lot to say, and Juliet is certainly a good messenger for that.
Yeah, and one of the things she alludes to or gets into in our discussion is there are a lot of creative types who like Brompton. They like the fact that it's different. They like how it looks. So they have a whole kind of creative community that has then also taken ownership of the brand and done their own communities and rides and groups and things that is also really interesting. So this is a great episode. I think everybody's going to get a lot out of this. So here's our discussion with Juliet from Brompton. All right, Juliet Scott-Croxford from Brompton. Great to see you, and thanks for joining us.
Great to see you both. Thank you for joining. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
For sure. Hey, let's just jump right. Juliet, Brompton is a really unique company, really unique product that has really stood for something over time. Can you give us a quick background on Brompton and sort of how it got started and then how it translated into the United States, which is totally different than its original market?
Yeah, absolutely. So Brompton was established in London in 1975. Our inventor, Andrew Ritchie, developed the first one in his apartment in London, really intended to move around the city, but he lived up a few floors, so without an elevator. So it was very much about having something that was convenient and portable to move around. And it has subsequently, fast forward 50 years later, become this iconic folding city bike, really credited for revolutionizing bike manufacturing and mobility, particularly in the UK, but further afield now we distribute across about 43 countries globally. We really started with the intention of this being the original city bike before city bike was actually a thing. And it was really targeted to commuters, but now really it's commuters, adventurers, athletes, A-listers, and we've built this incredibly passionate following and community that's obsessed with this balance of function and quality and style. Every bike is handmade in our factory in London by a really qualified elite team of engineers and brazers to ensure that no detail is overlooked. And we pride ourselves on the quality and the ingenuity of the folding system, which then has kind of seamless attachments in terms of accessories to it. And we distribute across the globe through owned and operated retail. So we have about 15 flagship stores across the globe in key cities, as well as across a wonderful network of bike shops and retail partners, both national and local, as well as on Brompton.com e-commerce, where we deliver direct to home or in store. And we have about 1,500 sort of carefully selected independent retailers globally. And really the intention is to bring joy to people's lives as well as convenience. And it's particularly known for the sort of quirky looking style because it's this 16-inch wheel. It originated as this 16-inch that folded down to a third of its size. We now have a more expansive range that also includes the 20-inch. And we've distributed in North America for some time, but about 5 years ago, we really accelerated our direct market distribution and setup. I joined the company about 4.5 years ago with the intention of growing awareness in key cities across the US. And really sort of elevating Brompton as a lifestyle choice, not only for consumers, for commuters, but also for people that like to use it in a more of a leisure and day-to-day life activity. And we've also then expanded the range to include electric as well, which I know we'll come on to a bit later in this conversation.
Thank you, Juliet. I just want to add, 2 years ago, I got to take a tour of the factory in London, which I thought was really amazing, actually, the scale of it, the organization. And one of the things that I noticed that I thought was really interesting is the mission statement for the brand to create urban freedom for happier lives was up on the wall, painted like in huge letters on the wall, the inside wall of the factory. And how is that mission important to the company? And tell me how you use that with Brompton.
Yeah, it's incredibly important, and it's really signaling that feeling that this product conveys with our community, which is it's not just any old bike, but actually once you've tried it and once you've converted, there's a bit of an aha moment. And there's also, I think, a feeling that you get when you first ride a bike when you're a kid. And it is that sense of freedom, and you can go anywhere. And whether it is that you're in New York or in another city stuck in traffic or underground, there's nothing more pleasurable than being in control of your destiny and being able to explore and get from A to B, and having the freedom to do that on a two-wheeled bike, but also reflecting on not only the convenience, but like the physical benefits and the mental health benefits that brings as well. So it's absolutely a mission or a purpose of like what we stand for. And we all kind of are very familiar with that reflection of urban freedom for happier lives, because it's reflecting both, we're in cities first and foremost, and it does bring joy and happiness to people's lives. It's not just about fitness or getting to somewhere as quickly as possible. And it really does give, I think, the most seasoned cyclist a reason to smile. Like when I'm hanging out with, other people in the industry and other brands, I never get that sense of you're a competitor. It's always like, oh, you're Brompton. Everyone likes Brompton. It's sort of, I think it's also because quite often a Brompton is an additional bike that someone has in their collection of bikes. So it's not your only bike. And it has got this quite unique sense of, I guess, style and feeling and convenience to it. So yeah, I think the mission is incredibly important to us, and it's really sort of reflecting how riding a Brompton can transform your everyday life.
With the idea of the mission in mind of urban freedom, how do you segment your customers, or how do you think about the ideal customer? And is that customer different in the UK versus the United States?
Yeah, I mean, we do. I mean, we have kind of consumer segments like, a lot of other brands do. we really try and pull on people's interests and cultural interests as well as demographics. So we really sort of try to think about the use case of a Brompton in someone's life, and whether they are motivated by style and art and travel versus the use case of someone that's going to use it every day to get to their office and back home again. So we tend to do something that's a bit more holistic in terms of our segmentation, rather than just demographics of, are you male, are you female, are you in this age group or this age group. That obviously does factor into it, but typically we sort of try to go a step beyond that. And then by market, we sort of have kind of our top 3 audience segments, and recognize that some of our products are more applicable to some than others. So, you know, we have an entry level Brompton, but we also have an all titanium, and we also have an electric version. And depending on how you use it, and also where you live and what location you're in, we tend to target our products to those types of things, if that makes sense.
And Juliet, you brought up like creative types. Do you find that Brompton bikes appeal to those for creative in a way that other bikes might not?
I think they do. I can't tell you why. I think it's the design aesthetic. And it's not an accident. It's such a clever piece of equipment or engineering that I think there is quite a deep respect in the creative and design community for the design and how useful it is. And it really is that meshing, I think, of practicality and quality, as well as that kind of sense of feeling that it brings. So it's kind of very much like heart and mind, I think. And I think there is definitely a respect around the ingenuity of the product and the engineering. And we really hold ourselves to account on that. So we're not always first to market on something because of it. But that quality aspect is incredibly important and reflective in our e-bike development as well. But I do think it appeals to the creative space, and I see that when I'm in London and when I'm in Paris and when I'm here, you see pockets of like industries that it appeals to, but just generally, whenever I meet anyone in the community, they're really interesting people. So whenever you're on a Brompton and you pull up at the lights and someone else is on, you start talking to them, or if I'm on the train on my commute to work, they're always incredibly interesting, interested, curious individuals that I think are like non-conformists, if you like, and they want to kind of plot their own path in life, and they're very proud of being part of the Brompton community. And it's sort of like, well, it's a really good secret, but it's also something they love. And so I think everyone's very different and unique, but also share this kind of deep sense of belonging and connection to this fascinating two-wheeled thing.
You know, it's interesting. One thing that's very clear about Bromptons is you have a differentiated product. It looks different. It folds up like other bikes don't. It has the small wheels. Like, it's a completely different product that looks nothing like any other bike. And Mark and I talk a lot about how so many bike brands are essentially commodities. It's like the same frames and made in the same factories with the same material, using the same components. They're essentially identical. And Bromptons are over here. They're like a completely different thing, which I think is really important.
I agree. I've been thinking about this a lot. And how do bike brands differentiate themselves when they all look very similar, ultimately, and they all do a very similar thing? And I think for Brompton, one of our like USPs is our community. And when I reflect on brands that have this almost cult-like following, there's something more than just the product that's creating that. And I do think it's that sort of that love for it, as you're using it. It's something you can't do without, almost, or it's something that you you get a real enjoyment out of. But I also think it's to do with relationships that you build through it as well. So our community quite often self-organize. They'll go on rides together. We have meetups in different cities across the world, and that hasn't been forced. That's kind of very much authentically developed over the last 30, 40 years. And that's interesting to me. And then I went to Shanghai last month for our Brompton World Championships in China, and you see it being used there, and how the community there are basically customizing their bike, and so they all look completely different. So they've all got these Bromptons, but then they've put animal baskets on the front, and they've changed the spokes and the tire and the pedals, and it's just amazing, like how many different trinkets and things that they customize the bike with. And there is like there is like a sort of club, but it feels inclusive, I think, as well, which is something that sometimes the cycling industry doesn't always get right. And I think when you kind of think of that sort of stereotypical, person that would race a bike in Lycra, that hasn't always felt that inclusive to everyone. Whereas I think the Brompton community feels a lot more wide and open, and it's not about performance necessarily. A lot of it's about socializing and your mental health, and I think feeling mentally happy by what you're doing, which I do think is quite different to the sort of traditional sort of road bike mentality.
Definitely, which is generally pretty exclusive, excluding people in a way. And Brompton being about fun, it just makes complete sense. You can't help but smile when you see one. Is the e-bike customer for Brompton different than the regular push bike customer, do you think?
I do think, there's something about the ability to go further. So obviously, I think there's some crazy stat like over 80% of journeys in the country are under 3 miles. And the people that have purchased an e-bike, again, it does tend to be about the quality, the performance, but also the power and being able to go further. And they do typically skew slightly older, which I don't think is a surprise. I also think for us here in this market, we've crossed over into more of a recreational group of people. So, you both know that 50% of bike riders and owners in this country are doing it recreationally, and 50% is sort of more from a commute standpoint. In Europe, that's much more skewed to focusing on commute, and in London as well, if you look at it city by city. So electric has definitely, we've definitely seen a lot more growth in California, and we've definitely seen a lot more growth in the leisure world. And also for those people that want to use it to do further distances as well. But it's interesting because when I look at the data, and I'm sure you have as well, it's one of the categories that's still growing, and it's still forecasted to grow about 7-8% over the next few years, year on year. So it's interesting when you look at what's happening in some of the other bike categories. And for us as a folding category, that's quite niche, especially in this market. You're not trying to convince people to buy a Brompton. You when you've got a lot of space, you're also trying to explain why having a folding bike is a very useful thing, whether it's to store it in your apartment or in the trunk of your car. So for me with electric, there's something that it does about broadening and expanding our opportunity to grow, and almost lead with e-bike first, and it happens to fold as a feature, which is an incredibly fantastic feature, and it's built incredibly well. But for us with electric, it is about that kind of power, performance and quality aspect as well. But yeah, I think if I think back to a few years ago, there was a slight, I think, not skepticism, but a bit of a snobbery around, why would you have an electric bike? And I do think that's changed, but you still sort of have that slight ageism, I think, with it. But I love it, and it's fun, I think. And
Yes, I can imagine.
yeah, and the G line, I can't remember, Peter, if you rode that, the 20-inch that we launched this year, but that's now set to go 20 miles per hour as well,
Right.
which is super fun. It's brilliant.
I did not get to ride that, and now you're reminding me that I should have when we were together in Bentonville. Okay, so wait, I just want to understand what you said. In Europe, people are using your e-bikes much more for commuting to and from work, whereas in the United States, that's like half the users, but half are using it for recreation. What is that? What is recreation on a Brompton e-bike? What does that mean exactly?
I mean, on that recreation versus commute, that's across bikes, not just e-bikes. It's an interesting one. I think the mindset and culture of riding a bike in the United States is quite different to, I mean, you've spent a lot of time in Europe where you grow up learning to ride a bike is one of the first things that you do, and you live with it, and it is seen as a tool and something that certainly if you're in an urban setting, you use, and it's part of almost your DNA, that's how you might get around. I was talking to a mum recently, and she was saying she lived in Houston in Texas, and she was saying she actively stopped her kids from using a bike until they were 11 or 12-year-olds because of the safety. And I just think when you're growing up in Europe, the mentality is, no, it's a life skill. And it's a great way to spend family time together. It's liberating and it's healthy. It's a healthy way of life. And you want to have your kids being active and mobile. And there's definitely a mindset difference here. And I'm sure some of it is to do with infrastructure and how cities are built. And obviously there's a lot of cars and wide roads, where that mindset of this is how we just move around the city isn't there. I mean, you've seen Paris and London, and there's parks, and Amsterdam, and it would be weird for you not to ride a bike. Whereas I think still here in many cities, you look odd if you're riding a bike.
That's right. I can
a real
confirm
difference.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think New York has broken through that barrier. And there are probably other cities that also are starting to, but there's other cities where you think, gosh, I can't see them breaking through that anytime soon. And there's probably a lot more that needs to be done for parents to feel safe where they are saying, no, my kid's got to be riding a bike at 3-4 years old and we're all going to go out. But I mean, in some places we don't have bike paths, and it's not really actively encouraged. Like when I grew up at school, we did a cycling proficiency course. Like you had to do it. You learned how to ride safely. You passed it, and you got a certificate at the end of it. And that was just a very normal thing to do in elementary school. And I feel like here the conversation is still cars versus bikes, and is it safe?
Yeah, that's right. Can we just dive into e-bikes a little bit? The e-bike business in some ways is struggling a lot right now for a lot of reasons. You see Rad Power, a huge maker, is on the verge of going out of business. Why is the e-bike business in trouble right now? How do you see the e-bike business?
I mean, it's an interesting one. I zoom out. I think the industry has been challenged ever since COVID. I don't think it's just e-bikes. I think just generally we've seen bike participation is still going up, but volume of bike sales is not going up in proportion to bike participation, I think, number one. And, the post-COVID slump where there's a flood of inventory, we've really only just got ourselves out of that, or in some cases continuing to. And then you layer on the challenge of tariffs and where, those low cost manufacturing markets are now, very much getting penalized for importing into this country. So I think there's been a lot of headwinds that haven't helped. Then layer on e-bikes. I think Brompton launched its first electric bike in, I think it was 2017, and we delivered, I think, our first consumer bikes in 2018, but really got going in 2020, 2019. And for us, the system was designed to keep the bike folding exactly like a regular Brompton while providing more of a smooth pedal assist tailored for city riding. And that kind of signaled our first launch into electric mobility. And then we've sort of developed it ever since. And we've now really upgraded it, where we're being powered by our new Emotique system, which is a smoother assistant, improved efficiency. And it's really designed to work with the kind of lightweight fold of a regular Brompton frame. But there's been a huge amount of challenges along the way. And if I just think about New York and the safety aspects, I think there was an initial early adoption of e-bikes. There's also, I think, a lack of understanding, certainly when there was a lot of media and continues to be around e-bike safety and particularly battery safety, of not really understanding why. And a lot of the times those cases were where people had manually converted standard bikes to an electric bike or purchased something that isn't the highest quality and is quite low cost. But unfortunately, I don't think there's been enough understanding and education around the differences and what you need to look for in an e-bike and what's safe. And I think rather than spend the time sharing that and educating, I don't think us as brands have done a particularly great job at explaining that. We've sort of had this swathe of regulation, and coupled with the challenges of sort of the wider industry, which hasn't helped, I don't think. And I do think it's different country by country, city by city. Like if I look at Germany, the volume of e-bikes being ridden in Germany is huge compared to other countries. And I'd say, they have really gone electric in a big way. Whereas here, I still think there's a bit of in some cases, a fear factor of, oh, I'm a bit scared of this. And then you've kind of got that safety piece layered on top. And then you've also now got a huge amount of low cost product, which isn't necessarily the best quality. So I think all of these things have kind of compounded the e-bike industry. And then also you've kind of got all of the components that you need to buy and purchase with it. So the tariff piece has been incredibly challenging on top of it. So I just think there's a lot that brands are dealing with, and it's probably taken away from the real benefits of what an e-bike can bring. Yeah.
And has being a manufacturer not based in Asia been a benefit to Brompton, or has it hurt Brompton? Has it made it more complicated for you to bring bikes into the United States with the current tariff situation?
I mean, it's definitely made it more complicated and costly. Probably not as well, certainly not as costly as if we were manufacturing in China, but we are also not manufacturing in a low-cost market. It's not cheap to manufacture in London. So, and we're also not, US is not the largest market for us for Brompton. So we have had to respond like everyone else has in terms of pricing, volume of product, looking at our supply chain. Previously, we didn't have any tariffs on e-bikes imported into this country from the UK. Now it's at 10, 11% on electric. So it's not insignificant, but it's certainly, I think other brands have been hit far worse. I think the biggest challenge for us is just the volatility around it. And it's very difficult to plan without really knowing, okay, what's going to happen next.
like in January, or is the Supreme Court going to strike the tariffs down or not? Like none of us can plan until that happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you just say that the US is your biggest market?
No, it's not our biggest market. So China is our largest market, and it overtook our obviously headquarter home market UK a couple of years ago. So for us, US specifically is probably about number 4 or 5, and both China and Germany are huge for us. Currently, we don't do electric in China, but we do in Germany. And however, the adoption of electric here has been really positive for us. So from a product mix standpoint, our electric mix as a proportion of our total volume of bike sales in this country is increasing and growing. And we're putting a lot of emphasis on electric with our, with the R&D that we've invested in it and with the launch of G-Line. And then in January, we're also upgrading our C-Line and P-Line e-bikes with our new Emotique system, and then also introducing T-Line electric, which is our titanium, which is very exciting.
And I'm just wondering, have you thought about building a factory in China for Chinese markets, because that's a big market, or in the United States for the American market?
So we've never ruled out manufacturing in another market. I think right now, with the volume and volatility of the US, it doesn't make sense for us to manufacture here. And I think we'd need to be much bigger to do it. That's not to say we never would, but certainly at the moment, with the situation and the cost of tariffs, it just doesn't make cost-effective sense for us. I do think there is a case for us to look at manufacturing in Asia, not necessarily in China, but possibly in China, but also because that would help us probably accelerate our route to market much quicker there as well. So I definitely would say we've never ruled that out. Certainly at the moment for the US, it doesn't make sense for us to manufacture here. And I think even talking to some of the larger brands that are, 4 or 5 times our size, they also can't make the math work on it. And it's also quite hard to get hold of a lot of the, even if we did, the parts have to still come from overseas anyway. So yeah, it's there's the sort of logic of how that would work is quite hard to reconcile at the moment.
Yeah, try finding a bicycle chain or a bike tire that's made in the United States. It doesn't exist.
And one thing that Peter and I talk about all the time that I wanted to kind of get your insight on is company-owned retail. It's been really fraught in the United States. Some companies have tried, some companies have failed, and it seems like it's really difficult. How does Brompton manage to have owned retail in the United States?
So it is really difficult. And I think, for me as I guess, regional lead, president, MD of this region, it's important that we have, for any own retail, it needs to make financial sense, like the numbers need to stack up. But I also see it way more as a great example of what our brand looks like and feels like in a physical bricks and mortar space. And it's, we've always seen our own retail as kind of a hub for our community to come, not just to purchase product, but to hang and meet and learn about the brand and the history and the legacy of it, but also to try stuff. And I think first and foremost, like physical locations are important because there's such a important trial aspect to our product, and we want people to try it, we want people to test ride, and we know that once they do, conversion is much higher. But then how you make that work from a cost point of view in terms of footfall and traffic, it's a really hard one to justify. And certainly in other markets, we've tried other models like licensing and franchising, which has worked well for us. Obviously, it comes with other challenges in terms of, how well is your
representation.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me, our retail partners and our retail network needs to be the priority, and we have to be really choiceful about how we spend marketing and brand dollars. And it doesn't always necessarily make financial sense, particularly in a climate where, we're trying to generate, I guess, protect profit and generate cash. So for me, it's more about, okay, do we need a flagship location in one or two key cities versus we need them everywhere? And that's sort of where I'm at the moment. But it's also a hard one because the other thing we want to showcase is that the flagship stores should almost be a beacon for our retail partners to show them what good looks like as well in terms of representation and presentation. But the cost of leases and the risk in the US is really high. And when you look at the cost compared to other cities across the globe, yeah, it's nuts. And also just the capital expenditure needed. So I think you've got to be quite thoughtful with it, but no doubt it's a brilliant way to drive awareness for your brand and to enable, I guess, trial of your products.
So, Juliet, can I just jump in here? You sell Bromptons mostly through bike shops around the country.
We're omni-channel, so about 50% of our business is through retail partners, bike shops, both independent and national. So we have about 80 retail partners, local retail partners, bike shops. Some of them have multiple stores. And then we also work with REI. So we're in about 50 of their stores nationally. And then we have one owned and operated store in DC at the moment. We did have a pop-up in New York, and we also recently closed our flagship in New York. But that was more to do with timing in terms of lease and going into winter. I think having a branded store in your key city market is a good idea, but I think timing is everything. The other challenge is the seasonality of this industry, which is, it's April through to October, and then you've got quite a slow season. So mastering how do you make that work 12 months of the year, I haven't quite worked that out yet either. So the majority of our sales are 50% through retail partners and retail local shops, and then e-commerce as well. So we deliver direct to home.
So you closed the New York store. Are you planning to reopen that at some point?
We would really like to. I think it's not going to be imminent. And I think, just going back to your point, Mark, is that how do you make it work? I think where the location that we were in served us really well for about 5 years. But it was clear that we'd outgrown that space in that location. And for us to reach new and more consumers, we need to go to a heavier footfall area, because it had become a real destination store and it was fantastic for our community. But then when you look at real estate prices in some of the heavy trafficked locations in, whether it's LA or New York, you've really got to make the numbers work and have, the cash and the investment to do it.
And I think also to have the patience to see long term, if we invest in this, what's the result of even the surrounding market? Like, it's going to grow much bigger than just the bikes you're selling in the store, probably. But
totally.
You have to have the patience.
Yeah, and globally, the approach that we have taken now is about how do we activate cities. So rather than just thinking, oh, is it owned and operated, or is it a retail partner or something else, we're really thinking about what are the key cities that make sense for us to activate in, where we've already got an organic Brompton community, we're already seeing organic sales growth, and we've got strong partners, and there's great development from an infrastructure and bike advocacy point of view. where it makes sense for us to double down on that investment and really grow the consumer base in that city, as well as content creators and key opinion leaders and community bike leaders. So that's the approach that we've taken, where we're looking at it more holistically. And we know actually that the more where we've had stores, they naturally drive traffic to online purchasing and other retail partners as well. So we definitely see it as more of a kind of flywheel effect, and there's a full ecosystem within that city. But I think it's just about, okay, which cities are we prioritizing? And in this market, we've got to be really focused on where we spend our efforts and resources. And some of the bike shops are doing a fantastic job at, and actually, if anything, know our product better than if we were to do it ourselves.
Yeah, it's a tough balance to strike in the United States, and the biggest brands have not cracked it. So I'm always interested when my ears perk up when I hear people are doing owned retail.
And I think also there's that some brands went really one way and some went the other, and we've tried and strike a balance, recognizing that there's the sort of pre-learning of what you want to do. Then there's the purchase, when you think about the end-to-end journey, and that can take some time, from first understanding the brand, researching, trial, purchase, and then being part of the community, and then the after-sales service. Different modes and formats of distribution lend themselves in different ways. So our retail partners are so brilliant at the servicing aspect as well. So we've really tried and keep a balance and not say, well, it's all online or it's all dealer, and I think also it helps with your profitability to have a mix of both as well, and also just give consumer choice on how they want to do that.
See where they are.
Yeah.
Juliet, where's Brompton going in the next 5 to 10 years, both on the push bike side and the e-bike side? What does Brompton look like in the next 5 to 10 years?
So certainly electric is a big bet for us, and will continue to be as part of our R&D spend, and our growth. I think that's first and foremost, is the winning in electric and continuing to build brilliant products that delight our consumer and enable them to have that convenience and quality still. And there's a lot of kind of exciting product development in that arena. So I think from a product standpoint, winning electric is key. The piece I mentioned about activating in key cities is also a real focus for us globally. So rather than trying to be everywhere and be everything for everyone, we are trying to be a lot more focused on, these are the top 10 to 20 cities globally that we want to spend time to develop before we go on to the next ones. And I think certainly in this market, we can't do everything. So we've got to be quite choiceful about where we focus our time and where we focus our efforts. And then I think it's, just from a sort of, some people will find it boring, but I think obviously growing our profitability, but also from a brand perspective, reaching new consumers. So I think there is something about not just speaking to our existing community, but actually how do we reach new consumers that know how to ride a bike but wouldn't have necessarily thought that a Brompton is something that they see themselves on. So it is still very much a top of funnel, let's grow awareness and acquire new customers, but also continuing to cultivate our community and spread that word of mouth. I think we do really, really well, but I'm using community in a much wider sense, not just for our Brompton owners and fans, but for our retail partners as well. So really working with them on how can they develop that Brompton community within their local area and support that local bike shop as well.
Great. We should get this wrapped up. We do have our final question, which we ask all our guests, which is, can you tell us about the first bike that you had and your experiences riding it?
I did it. It was a rally. You know what? A rally, and it was purple, and it had a little basket on the front. And I remember I got it for my birthday, I think, and I remember going to the local bike shop with my dad to get it. I picked it out. And I also remember the first time I wasn't meant to ride on the road, but I went outside our home. We lived in a village in the southeast of England near Ashdale Forest. And I wasn't meant to go out of the garden, and I did. And then I went on the road and I fell off. And I remember, and I was fine. And I remember kind of looking down and thinking, oh no. But it was also that kind of sense of freedom it gave me, again, going back to, but it was a rally, purple rally, my first bike.
Love it.
That's great. Thank you, Juliet. Thank you for your time and sharing all the background about Brompton. Just so interesting. Thank you again.
Thank you both for having me.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, really appreciate you too. Thank you.
Okay. Gosh, that was a great discussion. And I know, Mark, we both got so much out of that. And Juliet is just a fantastic person. So anyway, I was really glad we had that talk with her. Okay, Mark, this is the freewheeling part of our show where we get into what's happening this week. What are you seeing right now? It's the week, a week after Thanksgiving. And what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, Peter, as you know, our agency runs a lot of affiliate programs for people in the bike industry. And one of the things that we got to see last week and into this week was just the Black Friday sales and how brands did. And people across the board did really well, much better than we thought. And I think we had a projection for what, we thought we could do for each brand. And I would say we probably doubled it with most of them. So we maybe were sandbagging a little bit, but I think they also over delivered. So I think it's interesting. I think it says a lot about who the consumer that's buying right now is. And I did read a great article in the Wall Street Journal today about how it is that K-shaped economy where people who have money, which I assume most people who are buying bikes from the kinds of companies we represent are people who are more well off. And those people are buying. I wouldn't say like normal, but they're definitely still buying. And then I think everybody else is just looking for an amazing deal. And I don't know, across our clients, I think we had both of those. We had some great deals. And we had people who just were taking an opportunity to get a new bike before the holidays.
That's interesting. Well, that's great news about Black Friday. I have another topic I want to get into that I'm seeing, but I will say in response to what you're saying, I've had a couple related experiences out here in the last 2 weeks. One is a very big prominent bike shop near me that I go to that has a community, group rides, everything just closed down. So that was kind of sad. And on one hand is a state of where a lot of the bike industry is at. On the other hand, I've been to a couple very small boutique shops here in Los Angeles over the last couple weeks, and they're having really great years, and they appeal a lot to the high end of the economy, let's say the upper half of the bike customer base, and they're having both of them really good years. And so I think your point is backing up your point about the K-shaped economy. Part of it is going down, part of it is going up. It's just interesting to see that kind of play out.
Yeah. And I would say I had dinner the other night with Chad, who runs Above Category in Sausalito, like one of the preeminent shops in the country. And he said the same thing, like his sales are robust and his average sale is like at least $20,000 for a bike.
Amazing.
Which it seems like you have to try to spend that much money, but he said he's having a great year, and it sort of just supports what you're saying.
Amazing. Okay, what I want to just talk about, I'm writing a blog post right now about using AI to train for Big Sugar Gravel. I used an AI training program from Fast Cat Coaching from, I don't know, May through October. And it's a really interesting experience training with AI. There are parts of it I really liked, like it kind of sets up this whole training program for you. There are certain things it updates based on your feedback and like, oh, are you tired? Why don't we back off and make tomorrow a rest day, etc. I thought was pretty good. There were other things like the AI commentary, and Strava does this also about your ride. Whoa, congrats on a great ride. Like, do I really need that? No. It's supposed to update my FDP. I didn't really see that happening, but I would say like net, like it worked. Like I got in really good shape in like the 4 months I was on it. It got me back to being on a training program, which I just think generally is great because you like just wake up in the morning. You're like, you don't have to decide like, well, what am I going to ride? Like, it's like, hey, I'm doing 4 times 10 minutes at whatever it's like, it's kind of set up for you. And then your training rides feel more intentional and like they feel like they have a purpose rather than like, I don't know, I'm just going out for a ride today. No, I'm doing this. And it just feels like you're going in a direction. And I do feel like that's really good. And I'm back on it again this week. I started like the preseason training for next year. I'm on the weight program and doing the base mileage and all that. And so I'm excited. I think my takeaway is that no matter what age you're at or what level you are as a cyclist, the process of getting more fit and getting into shape never gets old. Like that is evergreen. And no matter who you are or what level you're at, whether you're a world tour pro or like just starting out or somewhere in between like me, the kind of feeling of when you get on your bike and you're like, wow, I feel faster than I did last week. Like that's a great feeling, right?
Yeah. And was there a human in the loop on that at all? Or was it just literally
Not
just
really.
AI is doing the program?
Frank Overton, the owner of Fast Cat, is, full disclosure, a former client of mine from a few years ago and a friend. So I did text him a few times with questions, but otherwise, no, I was not. It was just me and the app. And their app is like getting pretty good. It's pretty slick and, it's a pretty good setup.
That's really cool. I can't wait to learn more about that. I know through people we work with that you know about, they're really working on some AI coaching programs and hardware to go with the AI. That is, interestingly, it's not aimed at the top of the pyramid. It's aimed at regular cyclists and making it really simple to get regular cyclists out on rides and to kind of gamify their experience in a way that helps somebody who's just starting out understand, not have to know what FTP is, but understand like, hey, if you just do this, you're going to get this thing. It's sort of like the rings on an Apple Watch. If you just exercise, it fills in the rings and you feel accomplished, right? It's gamification. And I think we're going to see more of that. That's leveraged by AI or that leverages AI and is just really smart about how it rewards you and motivates you.
That's cool. I look forward to seeing that. I started training for endurance sports, I guess when I was like 10 years old on the 6th grade cross country running team. And like since then, it's either been running or cycling or triathlon or, mountain climbing. Like I've been training in endurance like on it almost continuously.
Yeah.
For 50 years, basically. And it takes a long time to really learn about the building blocks and what really makes you more in shape. Over the pandemic, I really worked hard on my fitness and I understood, and I've confirmed this with several world-class coaches. Like the most important thing is just being consistent, right? Just doing something, moving your body 5 or 6 days a week, and then get sleep. Okay. Get nutrition, avoid addictive behavior, try and avoid like super, hardcore stress factors, which we all run into stressful situations. You can't fully avoid it. You try and like cut them down a little bit over time.
If I could just get rid of the stress, I would be so much better.
I know it's hard. I will agree. I've had many of those situations myself, but the point is like just being consistent and getting sleep and eating well. And before and after this training block with using AI and FastCat, I got a blood test from my doctor in my physical. That was in May. That was what spurred me to get on the program. I was like, wow, my cholesterol's getting a little higher than it was. Like, wow. Not out of control, but like on the high end of normal. So I told my doctor, who's amazing, I was like, I want to get on a training program and focus on my nutrition for 3 months and then take another blood test. She's like, awesome. And I did. And all my numbers across the board were 10% better in 3 months. Like cholesterol, 10, it was an unbelievable difference. And so like, hey, newsflash, exercise and nutrition is good for your health. I mean, it's like the oldest story in the book, but when you see it really like actually with the blood test, you're like, wow, that really does work. So
Yeah.
Anyway,
Love it.
that's my thought for the week.
All right. I'm going to download that app right now and give it a shot.
Thanks, Mark.